On October 13, 1926, workers hauled Eleanor Mills's coffin from a New Brunswick cemetery, 4 years after her burial. The autopsy laid bare 3 bullets in her skull, one right between the eyes, along with a throat slash that nearly took her head off. The prosecution made a chilling claim. Her tongue had been cut out clean, a debated detail unknown even to her husband back then. Why target the choir singer's voice? What venom craved that final hush? Go back to September 14, 1922. A telephone pierced the quiet at 23 Nickel Avenue, the grand Victorian home of Reverend Edward Wheeler Hall. He picked up from upstairs the voice of a woman asking for him. Hall came down, threw on his coat and stepped out into the gathering dark. No one laid eyes on him alive again. The very next Friday morning, Raymond Schneider, just 23, and his 15-year-old girlfriend Pearl Bomber, wandered down a dirt lover's lane on the Phillips farm. There, beneath a crabapple tree, lay 2 bodies stretched out on their backs. The man was in a dark gray suit, his Panama hat placed carefully over his face. Beside him, the woman wore a polka-dotted blue dress, her legs crossed at the ankles in a ladle-like way, her head resting gently on his outstretched arm. Torn love letters were scattered all around them. And right at his feet sat his calling card, laid out neat as you please. Can you see the mockery in it? This wasn't the chaos of a sudden attack, it was a carefully posed scene, like some twisted wedding portrait. Who went to that trouble? What personal grudge called for such a display? Edward Hall was 41, a magnetic force in the pulpit at St. John the Evangelist Episcopal Church in New Brunswick. His sermons drew overflowing crowds. His wife, Frances Stevens Hall, brought the family fortune. Farms passed down through generations, solid investments, real local pull. Servants kept their house running smoothly, and evenings filled with her Bible study groups. But beneath the surface things were fraying. Frances, with her strict faith, couldn't ignore where her husband's attention strayed. Then there was Eleanor Mills, 34, the vibrant soprano in Hall's choir. She was married to James, who swept the church floors for $38 a week. Eleanor passed her days lost in romantic novels and making near-daily trips to St. John's. By the end of 1919, Hall was dropping by the Mills home almost every day. Soon they were slipping notes to each other inside the hymnals, hers full of fire, his signed with the initials DL, standing for Thy True Lover in German. James knew something was up, or at least suspected, but he stayed quiet, held down by his circumstances. In a town of only 30,000, where folks shared the same pews, the whispers built fast. During choir practice, eyes caught Hall lingering on her. And Frances had her brothers close. Willie, who was 44 but simple-minded and still living in their home, and Henry, the steady type with a marksman's skill honed on the family farms. Secrets like that don't stay buried long. That night, after the mysterious phone call, Hall walked out. Eleanor had slipped away earlier too without a word. Around 10:15 p.m., some who were there later said gunshots cut the air. The bodies lay undiscovered until Schneider and Bomber found them. The spot was a classic lover's lane, tucked against woods and pig pens, a good half-mile from the nearest house. But the ground told tales. Multiple footprints pressed into the soft soil, heavy boots and women's heels of different sizes. A .32 caliber pistol had fired at point-blank range, the bullets matching up, but the killer walked off with the gun. Those ripped love letters? They poured out Eleanor's devotion and Hall's matching passion. And that calling card at his feet, it was no accident, more like an ironic signature. When police arrived, it turned into a circus. Crowds trampled the scene, pocketing bits of paper and fabric as souvenirs. Picture this, the evidence from America's crime of the century, stuffed into tourists' pockets and blown away. The bodies were moved before anyone took proper photographs. Somerset County cops kicked it to New Brunswick, who kicked it right back. Any chain of custody? Forget it. The staging gave it away as personal. Her legs crossed so properly, his arm like a pillow. Not the mess of a struggle but deliberate humiliation. And those women's footprints? They pointed straight to someone from the inner circle. But the most eccentric witness was yet to come. A local woman the press mockingly called the Pig Woman. Jane Gibson raised pigs on a nearby scrap of land. On September 14th, she said, she rode her horse down the lane around 9 p.m. and spotted flashlights flickering ahead. 4 figures were arguing fiercely by the crabapple tree, 2 men and 2 women. Voices sharp, "What are you doing here?" Then a shot. Gibson claimed she ducked down and heard a woman scream, "Henry," followed by more gunfire. She bolted without calling the police. Her story lit up the newspapers. Gibson pointed to Frances, Willie and Henry Stevens with maybe a 4th figure. The details kept shifting, times didn't line up, descriptions got hazy. Over the top? Absolutely. But it punched a hole in the respectable front. Frances identified Edward's body with ice in her veins, insisting she knew nothing of any affair. Servants sang a different tune. The family maid's husband came forward later. Frances had learned of her husband's elopement plans that very night and rounded up her brothers, getting a driver to take them out to the lane to head it off. $5,000 reportedly bought the maid's silence. James Mills, seeing his wife's body, mentioned only that her throat looked cut, nothing about anything more. Resentment had been building for years. He put up with her endless church time, now revealed as something else. The tabloids went wild, staged crime scene photos, teaser excerpts from the letters. New Jersey's upper crust squirmed. This wasn't how rectors met their end. Governor George Silzer brought in state police, but the early damage was done. That calling card stuck in the mind. It was pure Hall, his way of announcing himself, now turned into a taunt. Had to be someone who knew him inside out. By October 1922 the trail went cold. Gibson's account got brushed off as nonsense. The case sat until a 1926 New York World Exposé series blew it open again. The public demanded exhumations. Hall's body came up first. A single .32 bullet through the right temple on a downward path, plus abrasions from a fight. Then Eleanor's with the prosecution's claim about the tongue. In November 1926, a grand jury indicted Frances Hall, Willie and Henry Stevens for the murders. No bail. The trial was set for Somerville. Then Arthur Gorsline, a regular at the church, broke his silence. He'd been parked on that same lane the night of the 14th, not with his wife but with a young woman from St. John's. Around 10:15 he heard the shots ring out clear. Henry Stevens suddenly appeared out of the dark, told him to clear off immediately. Days later, in a dimly lit lodge room under the watchful eyes of their fraternal brothers, Henry made Gorsline swear a blood oath never to breathe a word of what he'd seen. A secret society pact sealing lips on murder night. That testimony hung like smoke, hinting at cover-ups woven into the town's very fabric. The maid, Louise Geist, took the stand too, describing how Frances had paced the house that evening, muttering darkly about that woman. The defense painted Frances as a pillar of piety, her brothers as innocent protectors. Willie seemed lost in the courtroom, barely grasping the charges. Henry stayed rock-steady, denying every accusation. Gibson was wheeled in on a stretcher, moaning and pointing wildly, "That's them." But brutal cross-examination tore her apart, contradictions everywhere. Prosecutors leaned hard. Women's footprints sized to Frances's shoes. Bullets that could have come from one of Henry's .32s. The love letters as pure motive turning private shame public. But the chain of custody was a joke. Soil samples contaminated, no gun. Jurors talked afterward in whispers. They felt the guilt in their bones, but the law demanded ironclad proof and it wasn't there. On November 26, after 32 days, the longest murder trial in American history, Judge Charles Parker threw the case out before a verdict could even be reached. Cheers exploded for the defendants as they walked. Frances Hall strode out of the courthouse unbowed, her chin held high. Willie trailed behind, looking bewildered as ever. Henry scanned the crowds without a word. Decades on, in 1969, Julius Baliag, a friend of Willie's, gave a deathbed account broadcast on New York's Winds Radio. Willie had followed Edward that night and seen the bodies already posed. But by then it was just another echo. Jane Gibson had spurred her horse away into the night, her pigs grunting in the distance, the lane falling silent behind her. The hat still veiled his face, letters caught the breeze, and the singer stayed forever muted.